This video covering timing mechanics in video games will mainly be focused on Devil May Cry 5. Since playing Devil May Cry 5 in 2020, yes, I'm gonna mention 2020 a lot on this channel, we were all in quarantine and had plenty of free time, I was thinking about why I found that game so much fun to play. And I've come to realize that it's because of the large amount of timing mechanics that the game has. The timing and parry mechanics of DMC5 are very fun for me personally. Also, my favorite bosses in DMC5 are the ones that give you opportunities to execute parries and counters. Bosses such as Cavalier Angelo and Vergil. I started the DMC series with DMC5 and that probably wasn't the best idea. The story made absolutely no sense to me at the time, but the gameplay was fun enough to keep me hooked onto it. I was aware of the existence of DMC ever since DMC's Devil May Cry release and the controversy surrounding that game, but it was really DMC5's combat that caught my attention and made me want to pick it up. And after playing DMC5, it made me want to go back to the previous games, and I played through every single one, and even 100% of them. Every one of them except DMC2 and DMC's Devil May Cry for obvious reasons. I might be willing to give DMC's Devil May Cry a chance one day. No shot for DMC2. Okay, backstory done, now let's get into the playable characters in DMC5 and their timing mechanics. First off, there are 3 playable characters in DMC5 and 4 in DMC5 Special Edition. Starting off for the first character, we have Nero. Nero's timing mechanic comes in the form of his sword, the Red Queen, and the Exceed system. Now, Nero's one of my favorite characters to play as just because of how simple he is to use in comparison to the other characters. Especially in comparison to Dante, who has a lot of styles and weapons going for him, and who's just more technical to use overall. That doesn't mean I don't know how to throw hands using Dante. It's just with Dante I have to constantly think about what I'm gonna do next. Meanwhile with Nero, I don't have to use my brain as much. Dante is still my favorite character overall though. Nero does have a timing-based evade ability called the Table Hopper, where if you input it just before an enemy attack hits you, you can move around them a lot easier. I don't really use this move much, but I probably should just because of how cool it looks. Now let's get into the Exceed system. How the Exceed system works is that you can charge up the sword regularly with L2, or you can time your Exceed with your attack and charge up either a full bar, and if you manage to exceed at the right time, you can even charge up 3 bars at once. By using the Exceed system with the Red Queen, your hits become stronger and you even get access to stronger versions of certain moves. With the right timing, you can even exceed while doing an air taunt. Nero's Buster Arm also has a timing mechanic added onto it. Certain bosses will do moves that can be countered by grabbing with the Buster Arm. When timing it right in the boss against Vergil, Nero will let out a very satisfying. I love the concept of a sword being able to rev like a motorcycle, not to mention the way that the PS5 controller vibrates in response to it. Now for Mr. Wacky Woohoo Pizza Man himself, Dante. Dante definitely has the most timing mechanics in the game. This comes in the form of the Royal Guard style. Quick trivia about me, it was this style that actually got me into playing DMC5 to begin with. Seeing all the videos and memes around this style made me really interested in this game, and during my first playthrough as Dante, I made sure to use it as much as I could. I also tried using this style in DMC3 and 4, and soon realized how much harder it was to use in those games in comparison to DMC5. The Royal Guard style is built entirely around timing your enemy's attacks and blocking. The more you block, the more you build up the Royal Gauge, and once it's full you can deal big damage by executing a release. While you can just hold down circle to block in the Royal Guard style, this does take up some Devil Trigger bar, and doesn't really give you much reward for it. Now if you block as an attack is hitting you, you gain some Devil Trigger bar and the Royal Gauge fills up even faster. This also applies to the release for the Royal Guard, where if you time it just as an attack is about to hit you again, you let out a Royal Release, which does even bigger damage, and it looks cooler and feels more satisfying. Alright, we're gonna skip V because he doesn't really have any timing mechanics that stood out to me. And when you're playing V, you can just mash buttons and still be winning anyway, so let's move on. Now we're gonna talk about the Alpha and the Omega, Vergil. Vergil has timing mechanics that come in the form of the Trick Dodge ability and the Judgment Cut with his sword, the Yamato. I'ma be honest, I kinda forget to use Trick Dodge as an evasive ability and always use it to get in closer on enemies. There is a mechanic with the Trick Dodge though, where if you dodge certain attacks at the right time, it does help build up the Devil Trigger bar, and it's very useful for getting around enemies. Vergil also has a timing based block, but I barely use it, so moving on. Now on to the Judgment Cut. By timing when you press the triangle button during a Judgment Cut, you can get more hits out of it. To be even more specific, the timing of Judgment Cut depends on when Vergil sheathes his sword. The timing of the hits after the initial Judgment Cut is kinda hard for me to explain on video, but it's something that you eventually know how to do the more you play as Vergil. Once you do get the 4 hits of Judgment Cut out, Vergil also lets out a very satisfying. Even just parrying regular demons with regular attacks in this game is very satisfying. The sound cue that plays every time you parry an attack is great, not to mention how your style meter also reacts to it. The parry mechanics in this game is why I'm so excited for Resident Evil 4 Remake. Giving Leon the ability to parry with a knife is what made me even more excited for the game. Not to mention playing the demo and seeing different timing mechanics included in that game. Speaking of timing in Resident Evil 4, the other day I played the demo on the Mad Chainsaw difficulty, and I won't lie, that mode was kinda beating my ass, and I died. A lot. And during one of my runs, I did a lot of damage to the chainsaw guy, and I had a red herb in my inventory and knew where a green herb was on the map. Do you want to know what caused me to die during this run? It wasn't a ganado, it wasn't the Mad Salvador, but a chicken. This game is going to be so great and I can't wait. Also, I still completed the mode, by the way. Now on to a game that does a parry mechanic very unsatisfying. In Sonic Frontiers, there's a parry mechanic that requires you to press the L1 and R1 button together. And get this, there's no timing required at all. I don't know who at Sonic Team thought it would be a good idea to just be able to hold to parry, especially given that it requires no skill whatsoever and trivializes most of the enemies and bosses in the game. At least the music makes up for it.